Now, the death of well-known author and broadcaster Eusebius McKaiser has sent shockwaves across the country. Tributes have been pouring in from colleagues and politicians across the spectrum. McKaiser was known for his brilliant mind and analysis. So let's continue with some of those tributes and bring in our next guest from Media Monitoring Africa. That's William Bird, who joins us now via our video link this morning. And William, it's great to have you on the program, albeit under these circumstances. Thanks very much indeed for making time. So, a sharp mind, a fierce interlocutor, a son of the soil. From your perspective, given the contribution that Eusebius, we all know, made to the media in this country, how do we even begin paying tribute to him?
Yeah, I guess it's really difficult, and all the more so when his death is so fantastically untimely. You know, so many of us still can't believe we were going, but I was just looking at his tweets, and suddenly now he's not there anymore, and we can't quite grasp it. And I think it's probably going to take us some time to process that, and then to also then process his contribution in a fair and appropriate manner. You know, and I think that's probably what he would want us to do, would be to pause, reflect, and take some time to consider, his input. The things that stand out for me, of course, are his strong commitment to fighting for media freedom, to fighting against racism in all forms, to not letting people let go of that, to really just keep confronting hard and difficult subjects continuously. And the fact that he loved books, I think, given our hideous reading rates and inability of most of our children to read for meaning, you really need champions like him to be out there talking about, just how lovely and the wonderful world of books, aside from the fact that he was pushing, human rights arguments all the time, but that just his love for books and for intelligence is just I think such an enormous loss for us.
Yeah, in fact, what accompanied most of those posts was the hashtag for the love of books. And I think many of us who even followed his timeline closely can kind of even imagine all those pictures where on a sunny day he's reading a book. And, what's also really difficult is that in a time when we can't find the words, many people looked to Eusebius to describe those very events.
Yeah, and on so many of the issues that he would go and he'd spend a lot of time then going and unpacking it. Again, while we've got a few excellent legal reporters, you then had someone like Eusebius go through and unpack not just the meaning of the things, but then, giving his own take on it and helping people think through what some of the other issues might be. So that kind of level of analysis, I think, is another massive contribution to understanding our legal system. And of course, the more you help people understand that, the more they see the value and importance of due process. So it wasn't just the fact that he was unpacking legal arguments. It was very much about the fact that he was helping us understand democracy, how democracy works, how it can and should work, and then strongly critiquing, again, on an evidence-based argument as to why the arguments put forward by those who don't like democracy or anti-democratic, just the problems with their arguments, and just an incredible thing to be doing, and it's just unimaginable that actually we're not going to hear his voice. It's just it's quite ridiculous, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Despite him being a media practitioner himself, the media did not get away scot-free. I have a recollection very clearly of moments where Eusebius wanted more from the industry itself, perhaps sometimes even more specifically from colleagues in the industry. And it wasn't for the sake of criticism. You always found that there was a bit more to it than that, because he cared deeply and understood the incredible power that the media has, which is why his standards, according to a lot of people, actually were so high.
He would volunteer a lot of time and energy to helping us in our work. And again, it came from that principal basis of the media has a really important role to fill in society, and it does fill that role. But then they need to hold themselves accountable, and they need to make sure that they have some level of reverence and respect for the role that they have in society. And as such, it means they can't just afford to get away with slapdash nonsense. They need to take the time, put in the hard work, and put in the arguments and provide the evidence if they're going to build trust to help people navigate what is increasingly an information-laden world, that is overloaded world, I should say, that where it's so hard to know who and what and where and how and who to trust and which views to believe. So, and to do that, then you have to have people saying, well, you need to have better standards. You need to adhere to the highest ethical standards, because if you don't, then how different are you to someone who just makes up nonsense? And that's really one of the key things. So again, he was strong about that. I think one of his last or more recent podcast series was with Rudy Klabi, looking at and again interrogating the many failings and faults of our media. And we know there are many, but you need to do that. You need to look at them, confront them, and see how we can all do better. Yeah, and it's a difficult pill to swallow, especially coming from somebody who sometimes understands our challenges, but he really didn't hold back because of those many important principles that I think underpinned how he moved in this space. It feels like anybody, no matter how you felt about him, who took the time to give him an ear for better or for worse, was affected by what he said. And perhaps that's what's important to take away here. This is someone whose presence and contribution cannot be overlooked because it made a difference. Yeah, exactly. As you say, you may not have always agreed with him, but at least you knew that he wasn't there just for politicking. He was there to put forward an argument. And the fact that you then could disagree with him and still respect him showed that he was a man of integrity. And I think that that's something that'll stay with us a long time. And yet also clearly a man of great passion. I think one of his last tweets was about the dancer for Britain's Got Talent or something like that, and just saying you've got to watch this, you've got to stop and watch this video for a little bit of inspiration. So, and that wasn't a principled thing. That was just about a passion thing about, wow, look at what amazing people we have in this country. And I mean, it's ironic. Now we all thinking and wishing he was there, that we could let him know these things. Yeah, absolutely. Karen Moore in her tribute points to that particular tweet to illustrate the fact that, a lot of people would listen to Eusebius being incredibly critical of the country, and we all have many examples of that, and see that as him being pessimistic about the prospects of this country. But as far as she's concerned, the opposite of optimism isn't pessimism. It's apathy, it's indifference, and here was a person who, again, no matter how you felt about him, was not indifferent on so many critical issues in this country. And I suppose the obvious question that follows from that, as the grief makes way for more reflections, is, how do you keep that going? How do you ensure that void, even though we know perhaps no single individual will be able to fill it, but how do we collectively try to fill that space? Well, I think for me, it's about, we've got a young democracy. We need to continue to fight for it. It's only going to be there if we do. And it's, now we've got one of the biggest champions of democracy and rights is no longer with us, which is just tragic beyond words. So we now need to say, well, we've got to continue. We've got to pick up the flame, and we've got to carry on going. There are thousands and thousands of young people who I think have hopefully been inspired by him and others that are continuing to want to build our democracy. Your channel, Newzroom Afrika, is evidence of that. You had a group of upstarts who are like, we can do something different. We're going to have a new, exciting channel that puts forward different views and perspectives, and they did it. And that's the kind of thing that we need to keep on doing. Not just because things are looking incredibly bleak in many respects. We also know that we can still do and will continue to do incredibly amazing things. Absolutely. William Bird is with Media Monitoring Africa. It's certainly a difficult time for many of us in the space, broadcasters and organizations like yours that watch the work we do quite closely. So I really appreciate your trying to help us make sense of this moment.